May I request everyone to take seat as we are starting our session 5. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the fifth and the concluding panel discussion session for the day on HR and talent. How Indian banking needs to upskill, reskill, and retain employees to fuel the next wave of growth. I am pleased to invite the panelists to the dais. Shri P.R. Rajgopal, ED, Bank of India. Shri Rajiv Ahuja, ED, RBL Bank. Shri Pralay Mondal, MD and CEO, Catholic Syrian Bank. Shri Indrajit Kamotra, MD and CEO, Unity Small Finance Bank. Shri N. Kamakodi, MD and CEO, City Union Bank. Shri Kadam Belil Paul Thomas, MD and CEO, ISAF Small Finance Bank. Moderator for the session, Shri Varun Kejriwal, Managing Director and Partner, BCG. I request Shri Varun Kejriwal to initiate the panel discussion. Over to you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the last panel of day one of FIBAC. Today, we will look at discussing one of the most pertinent issues in Indian banking, which is HR and talent. We have with us a group of 6 esteemed panelists, and I'd like to introduce each of them before setting the tone for the panel discussion. To my left, we have Indrajit Kamotra. He's the MD and CEO of Unity Small Finance Bank. Indrajit has worked across Centrum, Stanchart, ANZ, and Citibank. And right now, he's focusing on building India's digital-first bank at Unity. Next to Indrajit, we have Pralay Mondal. Pralay is the MD and CEO of Catholic Syrian Bank. And he's leading the transformation of a more than 100-year-old bank to a new bank with a diversified asset book. Pralay has worked across Standard Chartered, HDFC, Yes Bank, etc. Next to Pralay, we have Mr. Kamakodi, who is the MD and CEO of City Union Bank. Mr. Kamakodi has been serving as the MD and CEO for the last 12 years and has been with the bank. He's also led the entire transformation of City Union Bank. Next to Mr. Kamakodi, we have Mr. Rajgopal, who is the ED at Bank of India. He started his career as a lawyer, then worked at Bank of India, Union Bank, and now he has been instrumental as ED to turn around the entire performance of Bank of India across business functions. Next to Mr. Rajgopal, we have Mr. Rajiv Ahuja, who is the ED at RBL Bank. Rajiv has, is someone who's worked at Citi and Deutsche, but now has been for many years leading the entire transformation at RBL Bank from a private old lender to a new age private bank. Lastly, we have Mr. Paul Thomas, who is the founder and CEO of ISAF Small Finance Bank. First of all, he's the one who had the recent very successful IPO, and Mr. Thomas has founded ISAF as a social initiative and then scaled it up to a small finance bank. So very happy to have the panelists here. Let me set some context about the panel discussion before we get into the questions. So, we did this panel last year as well on HR and talent, but the theme last year was a bit different. In today's times, what we are seeing in employees, in manpower, in the entire banking landscape are 3 things which are standing out. The first one is attrition. All of us have read about the high levels of attrition in private sector banks, mostly in the junior field levels, but it's a matter of time before we start seeing the after effects in the entire universe. The second is skilling. Uh, Always we have been great bankers with knowledge of credit and risk, but how do you then upskill yourself, reskill yourself to keep abreast with the changing technology, changing landscape, the changing requirements of banking? And lastly, there is this entire piece around how do we make banking employees happier and more productive. So how do you improve your HR practices to actually create an inclusive environment at the workplace? So we'll try and answer these three topics through the panel discussion. We'll keep it very open-ended, and we'll open it for audience questions as well. I'd urge you to ask as many questions as you can to the panelists. Let me start off with the first question. So I'll start with Indrajit. So Unity SFB is the newest entrant that we have in the small finance banking space in India. And he has the very arduous task of attracting talent into the bank, whether it be in newer divisions, whether it be across compliance, all other functions. So I'd like to ask Indrajit on how he has gone about building this bank, attracting talent, and how are you planning this entire piece?
Thank you, Varun. Hi, good evening. It's a difficult one, I know. Evening of a full, long day. We'll try and keep it interesting. Unity Bank is the youngest bank in India. We're the newest bank to be licensed by the Reserve Bank, which actually has been very, very good for us. We have a clear task ahead of us, is to set up a bank which will go forward into the new age. We don't have much legacy. We are starting from a very small base. So we've decided to go digital first, which basically means that our employees are going to be very young. This year we hired 55 management trainees from schools. Average age in my bank is below 30, which is hugely positive because each person who joins us has something that she or he can actually own and deliver. So we don't have really large groups of people or teams working on things. We have individuals, we have small groups which collaborate, and they are setting up this bank piece by piece, bit by bit, with the pride that I own this piece. This is mine. And in time, when we grow a little larger, they'll look back and reflect, I built this. What I'm saying is that pride to be in your role and have a meaningful contribution to what you do, I think is one of the most important HR aspects in banking and all industries. To be respected for what you do and be able to actually have content which you can deliver. Of course, as we go along, Varun, I will talk about engagement with young people. We have to have many things which are almost fintech-oriented. Our office resembles more of a Google or a Starbucks cafe than a bank. Our bank branches are actually more of cafes where people come, use the Wi-Fi, corroborate, have a coffee, and decide to bank with us. We are hoping we make this difference and bring something refreshing into banking in India.
Thank you, Indrajit. That's a breath of fresh air, I must say, in Indian banking. I'll move to Pralay. Pralay, you are leading the entire transformation at Catholic Syrian Bank. How have you gone about keeping the balance between having the old guard and attracting and embedding the new talent within the bank? What has been some of the key learnings of the last, I would say, 2 years of leading Catholic Syrian?
Thanks, Varun, and good evening, everybody. It has been a phenomenal journey for me personally last few years here. having worked in very, very large banks, and then starting the journey afresh with, with the mandate to build a bank which is 100 years old. So as you said, it's like a startup for them. For us, we are a 100-year-old startup. That's what we say internally. And I kept telling my team, unfortunately lost the cricket match in the final, but I'll take the example that we are starting after a century, taking a fresh guard. And when you look at the next century, you have to do a lot more things different compared to what you have done in the last 100 years. Having said that, we created a vision called SBS 2030, sustain, build and scale, sustain what you have done well, and we'll continue to leverage that, build the building blocks, and then transform that on the new highway and take the bank forward in terms of scale and take off from there in terms of the journey. So that's the thought process. We have created three kind of a phases, FY25, FY27, FY30. The reason I'm saying this is exactly what we tell to our investors, to our people who are joining us, and to all our stakeholders. Coming specifically to people, we have a lot of people who have built this bank in the last 100 years, and they are very valuable to us too, because we have still more than 40% of our business in gold loans. And most of these people understand this business very well, and they are helping us leveraging that business to invest into the future of the bank, which we are doing today. We have now built the CXO level, as we call it. That is, I have 13 people reporting to me. Almost 10 of them have joined us from large banks like HDFC, Axis, ICICI, Yes, Kotak, and this kind of organizations. And they have seen scale, because scale is something which you don't learn in management schools. Okay? Scale is something which you learn by doing with your own hands. So I always believe that we are not here to give consulting. We are here to build the business, and we need help of consulting, but we need to do it ourselves with our own hand. And that's why we have taken practitioners who understands. And the way we have built it, to your question, is we are doing getting the right set of people who has built large banks or large businesses, but one should do all over again, okay? And then they are building their own teams respectively, and that's the tree diagram we are building till the last mile. So we have various zones in the country. Almost all the zones have teams who has built scale in the organization and various organizations, and that experience we're building into the bank. We are very clear that we have 4 verticals in the bank: wholesale, retail, SME, and gold. Okay? And while gold will give us a sustenance factor, but rest of the business has to be built. As we're talking, we're building the inter-technology platform. We are getting people who are future-looking, who understands technology, understands business, has built businesses. And how do we attract people at least up to mid-management level is based on the respective people. They are getting their own people whom they know, whom they understand. And that's where our attritions are very, very low at the senior and the middle management level. At the entry level, of course, we are at the same place where everybody else is. And we have to attract talent. And most of them are Gen Zs, and so next 5 years will be Gen Alpha also. So the whole idea of motivating them, creating the kind of right balance between the old and the new, and that time the current management and we will be old, okay? And those are the guys who will take the bank forward. And how do we create that ecosystem to ensure that they see the future? Given the kind of GDP growth which we'll have and the kind of growth which will happen, banking will always remain very, very important. So I think that's broadly the perspective which we're trying to build: technology, people, products, processes, customers. At the end of the day, customers are more important, and people who understand what is the execution story to ensure we get the customers and ensure that they are happy customers at the end of the day will build the franchise.
Thanks, brother. I think scale was the big thing I took away from there, really building scale. Mr. Kamakudi, moving to you, I think you actually grew through the bank, right? And eventually, have led the bank for the last 12 years. This is one thing where I think if you look at banking in general in India, internal talent development or succession planning is not easy. And you're one of the examples of someone who has successfully reached the top and then, delivered the turnaround as well. What would be your view on how internal talent practices have been developed, and what are you doing there at the bank?
Thank you, Arun. When Mr. Inderjeet started, he started saying that they are the youngest bank. unity. So I take pride in saying we are the oldest bank in the forum. We are entering into our 120th year. We are into our 120th year, and one of the few banks even across the world who can boast of 120 straight years of profitability and dividend declaration every year right from 1904 to 2023. That's the level things have come. Here, to your point, by and large, we prefer internal talents. Wherever there is a gap, skill set gap, wherever we need to get, we go for that. But about not less than 80 to 90% of our senior management and also across the board. The 99% of the entry happens at the entry level. So very few at the middle and senior management level. We used to have very low attrition, but as you said, particularly in this generation at entry level, you have this issue. But once they cross about 4-5 years and get into the managerial cadre, they, like say by and large, they, like say the association starts. So being an 120-year-old organization, maybe Mr. Rajagopal is representing a bank which is slightly younger than us. We have people, both customers and also in terms of employees who are second generation, third generation, fourth generation, association and all that helps. And the 120 years, there are multiple levels of, like say, reskilling, upgradation of, operations. The business process re-engineering had been a continuous process in the bank, but which used to be once in a generation affair. Now it is becoming even, like say, once in a decade, or even it will come into once in a year sort of thing. The transformation is becoming a continuous process nowadays. But like say, it's a challenge, but we have been, as almost the, like say, we have people at the entry level, even they rise up in the cadre, that ownership which they take, particularly when they spend a couple of decades with the bank, and the ownership which they, like say, feel about the bank, which actually makes them to get committed to the organization. And there is certain level of motivation which automatically comes. And on the other side, as a CEO, I cannot dictate terms. I can't say that I want this. But the important point is that I have to communicate and convince each and every person in the institution that this is for the welfare of the bank, and that takes slightly longer time, but anyway it helps. That having a lot of homegrown people in the system, particularly in the middle and senior management, is really helping the bank. At the same time, like we have, like say at pockets, wherever there is a gap in the skill sets, we go for external talent acquisition also.
No, I think that's a big luxury to have, I must say, to have the ability to have internal talent, as you are saying at most of the places. I'll move to Mr. Rajgopal, who's the only public sector representative on the panel. Mr. Rajgopal, you have led the entire turnaround in BOI's performance and fortunes over the last 4 years. But on the HR side, especially it's a public sector bank, what were the standout initiatives that the bank took to help deliver this turnaround?
Yeah, thank you, Varun. Good evening to all of you. See, like Malay has rightly said, it's one of the oldest banks, City Union Bank, another bank which is oldest, and we are 117-year-old. And we also recognize that a lot of constraints insofar as public sector banks are concerned with respect to the HR initiatives. But what happens is the recognizing the constraints helps you actually transforming yourself. So what we have done initially is in the last, I've been associated with the bank for the last 4 years. What we have done is we first recognize what are the constraints. How do we actually go about overcoming these constraints? And how do we scale up to borrow from what Pralay was saying, how do we really scale up this HR initiative so that upskilling, reskilling can happen across the board? The number of employees, if you look at the size of the bank and the number of employees we have, is also enormous. Around 52,000 employees plus we have as of now at different scales, with different types of skill sets, with different requirements, and different needs for reskilling and upskilling. So these things have to be first of all mapped and recognized, which we have done in the last 2.5 years. First of all, what we have done is we have done a lot of capacity gap identification. And then once the capability gaps are identified, then we have actually started tailoring the programs. So earlier, most of the public sector banks, of course, now everybody is doing. So we were actually wholly dependent on internal training systems. Now what we have done is we have actually started adopting a very eclectic approach. I am not exclusion in that, everybody does that. We have only enhanced that eclectic approach insofar as HR training is concerned. We have taken on board the external training institutes. We have instituted a very dedicated, very bespoke training programs for people at different levels. We have leadership trainings, we have skill trainings, we have IT trainings, digitalized trainings, all that we have made a very comprehensive and then very multi-pronged approach to training and upskilling and reskilling of the entire HR. So we have also, what we have done is at the entry level, as of now, we have started following what most of the banks have been doing to create a system where 1 year continuous training happens, both at the field level as well as the classroom, such that the person who is onboarded to the bank is fully trained. And then we can utilize them at different areas. That is one thing. Another thing is, to follow what we have been doing, every other bank is doing. We started identifying job family, and we have given a very added emphasis to the job family concept that has been going on across the public sector banks. And we have identified them. With that, we could actually augment a lot of people who can be skilled in the specialized areas like credit, risk, analytics, IT. So we have been continuously doing that. So going forward, I think we'll have a very good pipeline of people who can actually fill up the gaps within the organization. Insofar as we are lucky, attrition is only 10% insofar as public sector banks are concerned. So the training cost that we incur is not getting wasted much. So that is one great advantage we have. So we can build on the training and skilling that we have already done.
Thank you, sir. I'll move to Rajiv now. Rajiv, RBL has and always has been known as a bank which has been at the forefront of technology adoption, working with fintechs, etc. And you've actually hired laterally quite a lot to get the right talent in. How have you genuinely trained people to speak the language of these fintechs or technology firms, and how do you manage to collaborate so well with all these newer technology companies?
So, Varun, I think what is important to understand is that, we took it upon ourselves that we don't need specialists to come from outside, always. And I think one of the biggest learnings for us over the last 8-9 years as we've been building out the bank is that actually if you put your internal talent, and we had to actually hire people from outside because we were only 700 people when we came in, is to put them through the pace in terms of doing new things. So today I can tell you that almost 90-95% of our middle senior management has been with the bank between 5 and 12 years. And many of them are doing roles which they never came in for. We basically took a chance, sometimes threw them at the deep end. And actually, I think you can't aim for perfection, but I think we have built a pipeline of people who can actually continue doing this. Now, that's part of our DNA, that's part of our culture. And for that, what's needed is many of us who are, who are far too experienced sometimes have to also be very humble and listen to people who may not have put in as many years, who can think of doing things differently. And as long as you are open to listening, open to testing, experimenting, I think you can continuously build this talent. Like I said, training, teaching are all necessary part, but it's the fact that you can put them into very exciting projects, which builds the whole experience, expectation, and then the word of mouth becomes tremendous. It doesn't mean that it's all easy, but it's a continuous process. So part of my job and a few of us at the senior management is to continue spotting people who can actually pick this up and just, give them the opportunity to do it. So to me, that's what has been our strength. And I think my own gut feel is that in the last 12-18 months, even as the industry's faced a lot of attrition, and so do we, so it's not as if we are immune to it, at junior, middle, senior, we have actually not faced. Uh, in fact, I can probably say it's low double digits percentage-wise, if at all. And that is because people like to come into the bank to work differently. They get recognized, and then they are given. So one of the things we are working on is a very active career engagement for many of these people so that they can pick up the paces a year from now, and many of us can step away.
Thanks, Rajiv. Uh, Mr. Thomas, first of all, congratulations again on the very successful IPO. Uh, Post this IPO, how have you thought about talent development? Have you earmarked any special projects that you are going after? And if so, in which areas are you looking at doing the employee development post IPO at ESAF?
Thank you, Varun, and good evening, friends. Uh, so with the IPO, IPO is to enhance our capital adequacy. So we have been, we are only 6 years as a bank, but we, as an organization, we have a legacy of 31 years. So we started as a developmental organization, and from that age, from a smaller organization, we have been giving a lot of emphasis on developing people, investing people. So as a microfinance company also, we had this challenge of people moving, attrition, all were there. Then there was a question whether we need to invest in people because anyway they are going to stay only for 1 or 2 years. Then we decided that anyway, even if they are moving to another organization, we need to continuously invest because as a sector development, so if every company decide to not invest in people, then there will not be any talent. So we have decided that we will continuously invest, and we were able to retain the talents also. So as a social bank, our challenge was to connect them with the purpose, so that because 73% of our assets are in microfinance, and and that is a part of our mission also. So we wanted to continue serving the unbanked and underbanked segments. So how do we attract people? How do we convince them from commercial banking, they come to social banking? So that was the biggest challenge. So I used to take pride in that we were in 6 years, we were able to do that. People transform people. Now all the senior people who come from various commercial banks are now talking for these segments. How can I work with every other product is competing? How can I work with these lower and middle income segments? So they are all exploring. So that is a conviction that these segments are needed. So the main thing we do is we connect them with the purpose. So we have we have a triple P agenda: people, planet, prosperity. That is everything what we do is connected with these 3 Ps. So we also have various programs. We have a environment week, we have a children week, we have senior Vayo Jyoti week. So various programs, these always, so they get connected with the social cause, and they could see the impact they are creating. So that is one thing, and we continuously, we have 2 training, we have set up 2 training centers, one in Kerala, Thrissur, and one in Bhopal. Also, we partner with all the major training institute. We partner with SBI learning centers. We partner with IABF, CAB, all major institutions. We invest, continuously we invest on people. So whether they stay with ISAF Bank or they move to RBL, doesn't matter. So because we are building resources for the sector.
Thank you. I took away 2 things. You can never stop investing in people for the fear of attrition. And I think for you, especially teaching them a lens of social banking is something which is not easy to teach. After this, I just want to open up for any questions that we have for the panelists here. I can see. Yeah. Can somebody please help with the mic over there?
Thank you for the wonderful discussion. HR is so important. So human is the most important resource for the organization. They can take on the sky of the organization. So, sourcing the talent is important, but retaining the talent also so important. So motivation is always required for them. So I'm just quoting one of the theory, Hardwell's Frederick, that given motivational hygiene theory, talking about the job satisfaction and job dissatisfaction. So both are so important for the organization. So how the bank is taking into consideration while designing the motivational initiatives and implementing the motivation in the organization, so how they are taking into consideration? How either you are taking these motivational theories so important for you, or you are taking an initiative on the basis of your experience. So I just wanted.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
You want to take a stab, Indrajit?
I'm very happy you quoted Hedder's theory. Takes me back to college. See, I personally am a firm believer that no one resigns from an organization. They resign from bad bosses. That's first. The second is you give the person pride that I own this and I have delivered this. That is the best motivation. It is not money. Money is important. Some level of it, commensurate with the skill and age, has to be there. But the fact that the person owns something she or he can deliver and stand up in the peer group and say, I have done this, is yours forever. So do two things. Reward good bosses and give people meaningful jobs. Your attrition rates will be manageable.
Thank you. If there's anybody, yeah, Rajiv.
So I think I will echo what Indrajit is saying. So I have a personal philosophy, and it's a borrowed philosophy, so it's nothing. You know, people are looking for in jobs autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So a little bit what Indrajit said. Especially if you look at outside of the frontline, retail service, because that's a little too early in the cycle. But we found that somebody who stays longer than 1 year in our organization, the attrition levels drop. And that crucial period of 1 year is when you need to figure out how do you make them, look at the organization from a long-term perspective. So I do believe that people join organizations because they want to advance their own self. And it's not just about the money. Money is a hygiene. But I believe autonomy, mastery, and purpose are three critical things. So as a leader, manager, if I can engender an environment where we can create that. We're not saying because you are like 4 rungs junior, you shall not talk to me. Okay, talk to somebody who's your immediate. I mean, I think those things are very important signals, especially in an organization in financial services, which is evolving very quickly. In a lot of ways, it should reflect the kind of customer base we have, which is also very, very, very fluid. And they're also looking to advance themselves in their own life. So that's my personal philosophy. If that works, I think we can build an interesting organization.
Yeah, thanks, Rajiv.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing to what Rajiv and Indrajit said. So basically, the question of what actually drives in terms of people working in the organization. See, then the other question that you asked is how do you actually design this as a part of the HR motivation aspect? Now, for that, there are wonderful tools available, HR tools available. You have bespoke models for through which you actually find out, dig out motivation, values across the organization and accordingly design the entire program to suit the different levels of motivation across the organization. So that is not a big issue. We don't decide anything, saying that, no, I have a perception about what motivates me doesn't decide the design of HR in the organization. Nobody does like that, even in public sector.
Adil?
Varun, congrats on putting together such an incredible group of leaders. When it comes to talent and resourcing, AI tools and AI is on everyone's minds. I want to hear from the panel, how is artificial intelligence going to impact banking functions?
Adil, very relevant question to today's world, especially what's happening in US right now. But on specifics, I think we are in a service industry. And if you look at slightly the larger banks, I'm talking about more on the private sector where I have seen, it's 80-20 rule, which is 20% of the customers contributes to 80% of your revenue, and sometimes almost 100% of your profit. And that 20% will always have a very serious engagement with people within the bank, which is the wealth management, private banking, and all of that stuff. That's all about engagement, relationship management, and all that. Having said that, I'm not saying that those customers will not use AI and not be using tools which will be digitally active, etc. Those are given, but almost all the banks or all the institutions they will work with will continue to have that. So on top of that, what is required is human interface, the knowledge, the understanding, the engagements, the wealth creation which are able to give that. So that part of the segment will continue to be very, very important from a people perspective. What is happening is the repetitive nature of the work, which you know very well, will go the AI way over a period of time. That has started happening long time back. Now we call it AI. Before that, we used to call it bots, robotics, all of this. So that will continue to evolve over a period of time. And with the new generation coming in, they have to evolve into value-added kind of a work. I mean, I would quote here the famous this guy. We said that for centuries the institutes taught how to become like a machine, and now they're teaching the machine how to become like a human being. This Jack Ma quote. But truth is that neither is possible, because there is a heart element out there which creates a relationship. So I don't think ever human can be replaced by AI, but the repetitive jobs will be replaced, and hence the generations have to evolve in terms of how to add value there. Lastly, I would like to say on this point is, it's not necessarily a competition. For long, people used to say fintech and banks are in competition. Today, I think the jury is out that it's a collaboration, not competition. Similarly, if you look at, in fact, I want to give a small story. You have these MUN programs in schools, and I was recently called to give some awards and all that in Manikji Cooper School. And I went there thinking I'll give a lecture, okay? And I sat there, and I was absolutely zapped with the new generation, their energy, their ability to adapt. Something happened, the lights went off, the way they managed the whole show. I said that my CXO management team, middle management, next level of management, myself, all of us cannot do this, what these kids are doing. And that's a Zen Alpha for us going ahead. And if you tell them to do repetitive jobs anyway, they will not do it, okay? So I don't see there is a conflict or competition between AI bots, or whichever we call it, vis-a-vis this thing, value-added jobs. That is good for the country, a country which wants to grow at 7, 8, 9% kind of a GDP growth. There's no question of making the guys work the same way. Let's take back to history and say that we don't do the same thing which industrial workers used to do. When automation came there, everybody said that that's the end of the world. But it didn't happen. Everybody upgraded themselves, and productivity actually emerged in the country, and country has moved. So we have to embrace some of these things. At the same time, the generation next is understanding this. They are going ahead, and they will add value to the organizations. And if we as management resist that, and we do not want to embrace that, then we are being, not being fair either to our generation next, not to the customers, not to what the world is looking towards. I mean, look at our UPI. I mean, forget AI bots and all this. A simple thing like UPI, how we have transformed, and whole world is looking at us. And I remember 20 years back, people used to say that India will never be able to compete with payments with the rest of the world. So things change. We have to embrace change, and that's a part of life. So I'm of that school of thought that AI is very important, and we must embrace it, but it cannot replace the human relationships.
Today, if you walk into a branch of a particular bank, let's say government PSU banks or private banks, and you talk to the people, they say that we don't have staff. Only skeleton staffs are there, and those. The reasons for which we have interacted with so many branch managers, they are telling that people do not work here, and they do not survive, and they leave. Even private banks and government banks. The reason for which what they say is that the very bad relations with the top bosses. That means their immediate boss. And very misbehaved with the people, those who joined recently, the new recruits. And many people, you will find the banks, private and government banks also, skeleton staffs are operating there, and bank services are hampered. So what HR is doing, what HR can stop this, how HR can stop these activities? Because they have to sit late, beyond working hours, and they get the firings from their immediate boss, and see, workload is more, beyond office hours they have to work, Sundays, Saturdays. Then how the banking system will achieve this economic objective of 8% or 9% growth when you are unable to link to the different sectors of the economy? Your attrition level is very high. And what steps IBA and the bank people are taking to stop this? Thank you.
Mr. Kamakudi, would you, because you're the one who's at the forefront of employee retention.
Yeah, very important question where everyone has to introspect. I would like to just give my own personal experience on that. I mean, when Mr. Indrajit started, in fact, he started with, like say, the attrition basically happens with the bad boss. I had an interesting experience. What happened was that 20 years back when I joined the bank, I was in charge of HR only. I joined as DGM in charge of HR department. So perhaps in your or in our generation when we used to join and all, we were not heard of the sort of attrition or whatever. When somebody enters the bank, they will retire only, like say, the career used to be with the same organization, more than 90% or whatever it is. Most of the people, they would have attended only one interview in their life. I mean, maybe after joining the bank, there won't be any more interviews sort of. I was referred to a case where in one particular branch, there were multiple number of resignations. That was, like say, that pattern was something interesting. When I checked up with about the person and all, I was also new. That person was a very, a senior person having a good track record, upright man. He was in chief manager cadre at that point of time and supposed to be, our bank was a very small one. Everybody used to have respect him for his integrity and things like that. Then I, like say, met him in one of the reviews and asked him, sir, perhaps he had joined the bank around the same time I was born. So he had more than 25, 30 years of experience. I was only 30 at that point of time. Yeah, I asked him, what is the, this is one point that has come out. I wanted to ask him, what is the point? What was his side of the story? He only said only one thing. Sir, I am not doing anything wrong. I am only expecting everything what my bosses used to expect from me when I joined the bank. Is that anything wrong in that? That was the immediate response which he gave. I had to, the point was that, like say, I had to then say him that, sir, the generations are changing, the way the people, particularly the younger generation, look into a thing is changing. You just imagine how your father dealt with your grandfather when he was in school, college and all, and how you dealt with your father, and how is your son dealing with you today. So I had to give him half an hour, 45 minutes story to say that the next generation is changing and you have to look into. The important aspect here is, all of the point, whatever people give, they add value. Another important thing is that, like say, the opportunities perhaps was not this much in the previous generation and all. Probably people did not have as many options what this generation has. And the tolerance level of this particular generation of the people to stay and to understand that this is also a point. We are also looking at only from one particular point of view. That's why what is happening is that, that's why the concept of, I also had another experience which I wanted to share with you. Perhaps you will also, like say, when, I'm finding it difficult to manage our seniors in the sense if we ask them to sit in the clerical to officer level interview, the immediate response is that how can you promote these guys and all, like only immediately they go to the Negotiable Instrument Act, once a dryer, always a dryer, or whatever, like say these, many of the things the things are basically changing. So I also had another experience, in fact, about 2 decades back when I went to, like say, once a bearer, always a bearer, what is that? the I had gone to, like say, in US for one of the investor conferences some 2 decades back, which was the last phase of, like say, going with the traveler's check. I mean, after that only you had more of cards and all. It was the last around, like say, 2002, I mean, 3, 4 sort of. So I went to a bank branch there. I had to encash some $1,000 or whatever it is. So when I went to the branch, absolutely there was nobody in the branch. I used to tell this story in our training sessions also. So there are only 2 people in that branch. So there was a young girl, junior girl, and a senior lady over there. So when I entered along with my, like say, cousin, like say, she invited us with a please come sort of. I was very happy with the reception I got. Then I gave this traveler's check. Her immediate response was, what is this? I got, because I did not have any more money with me. Unless and otherwise she changes that, I did not have money. Then, looking at my impression and facial expression, she said, I am new to the bank, I will give it to my senior. And that senior lady, she saw that and said, hey, this is traveler's check. I was happy, appa. So somebody has understood what it is. Then what to do? Then immediately she went back. You had all the manuals over there, A, B, C, D, E. She took that T, opened the page, traveler's check. She read aloud. I could hear. Ensure the identity of the person. If more than $500 is there, ensure identity with the 2 documents. Something like that she read. So she was not convinced. She immediately called her internal call center saying somebody from India has come. He is having a traveler's check. What should you do? It was in speakerphone. That guy from the call center said, ensure the identity of the person, ensure the identity of the instrument. The same thing they read. In the sense, and they wanted to send me out without encashing, and I was adamant that I will get the money, and I had to spend a couple of hours to get that, and that was the point when I understood, going forward, this is going to be very difficult to what you call, manage the resources and skill sets and all going forward. Perhaps we prepared for the do-it-yourself banking. Despite all the problems, whatever you mentioned, still banks are running because 99% of the transactions have become now do-it-yourself, mainly because of the arrival of the technology. And this is something, there are issues everywhere and which needs a constant, anything which gets out of the average automatically has to come back to the average. So that's why when a lot of attrition is there, people have started talking about it. So system will move, the pendulum will move from this way to that way to this way, and it will tend towards the average thing and all. So there are issues both from the boss's side and also from this generation which we have to understand. And this is something which we have to learn, and probably you saw even a bigger thing in the software industry which was spoken in a much bigger way, and now they say it has come back to the normalcy and all. This is something which we have to, like as Thomas sir said, like since every bank is also continuously ensuring the skill sets are made, this is something which the system has got prepared to. And from the customer side, they are also now, particularly the COVID had accelerated that. People have now understood to do their banking without any banker. That's the point.
Yeah. We'll take one last question. Yeah, please.
Hello. Yeah. Hello. Are you able to hear, sir? Sir, now with the advent of technology over the last 2 decades, a lot of specializations have come up, be it risk, compliance, IT, cyber, so many specializations. Now, when in these specializations, since they are relatively new, there will not be outflow of people from the streams like in operations where you will have continuous retirements and promotions that can happen. In such a scenario, how to ensure the career progression in those things? What are the panel's thoughts on that?
You are able to hear me now? Oh, thanks. Acha, your question has an answer in this, in that, to be very precise. The point is, there are hardly any skilled guys who are available. So there is no mass recruitment in these specialized areas. So naturally, the career progression, insofar as those areas are concerned, most of these have been coming into the banking system through lateral recruitment as of now, especially in the specialized areas. And what most of the banks, especially public sector banks, have done is they have actually identified a very clear career path across the specialized segments up to the top management grade. So beyond that, they have to actually have multiple skills and then get into the groove with respect to the business skills. Today, nobody can saying that business can be separated from technology, risk, and analytics. So they're all combination skills everybody should have. They have to go and reskill themselves. That's what is happening. To add to what present generation does, it's an amazing thing that present generation does. They go and work for 2-3 years, go back to college, acquire new skills, and come back and again acquire new skills. This is happening continuously. We see it. And now you see in the higher education, to be very precise, boys who are at the age of 29, 30 are pursuing higher education courses today. I have never seen anybody in our generation where people have stopped, were going to college after 21 years. Okay. So maximum we ended up in bank at the age of 18, or we ended up in the bank at the age of 21 and continued and forever. We never actually gone back to college. That is not happening today. So there is a lot of that career depends on the skilling. The skilling, people are adapting to the skilling. So naturally the career progression also happens in terms of skilling they do. So once they acquire the skills, they come and laterally move from one place to another place and then happens. So that kind of model is also elaborated very well within the HR policies that we create. One is basically the career vertical progression, another is horizontal progression of career is also envisaged within the policies. That's how this is being tackled. It is not that specialist becomes a particular specialist and continues to be a risk specialist forever. So he migrates from one specialization to another specialization by acquiring skills. That is happening. We see that quite often. In the IT, it is almost every day we see. Today that fellow, nobody hires a fellow who is actually a Java expert, or who hires a fellow who is actually does. He has to learn something new. He has to go and learn coding of Python and R so that he can get a new job. That's what is happening today. And we also facilitate it, and we create a system whereby he can acquire new skills and we fund them. Saying that he acquires the new skills, then he is given 5 lakhs, 6 lakhs by way of the free reimbursements, and he can actually migrate horizontally into new career. So career path is not vertical no more. It is horizontal also. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Varun, for accommodating this question. Good evening to all the dignitaries on the dais. Sir, I'll just touch base upon the attrition part for a quick response from you all. Sir, we talk about people leaving the jobs and there's a lot of attrition in the industry in terms of the banking sector. Could there be a more robust framework in terms of an exit interview, or if it is already there, could it be more impactful in terms of maybe convincing the employee, probably with some data as well, putting in front of him or her so that he might, the attrition might get less or maybe impacted in a better sense?
I know none of you are facing attrition issues, but yeah, Rajiv.
Partly, I know this question is directed at me because Shalin and I are colleagues. But I think your point is valid, Shalin. I think what is important, as we've also discovered, that there is that golden period of 3 to 6 months when a newcomer makes her or his choice. And that's a function of the boss, the environment, maybe gaps in how the business was, how the role was sold. And sometimes when we ask for a certain skill profile, we actually misfit them. So, I don't want to sit here and say all the fault is with this thing. So I think those issues are there. What we found is that if we do a very rigorous analysis of why those things happen, we can start addressing them. Beyond 1 year, I think it's incumbent upon the organization and the supervisor and the HR to actually constantly have conversations so that it need not come to an exit interview. And again, I think we are equally guilty. So if I look at some of my colleagues who've left on a very nice manner over the last 4 or 5 years. Now I reflect back, what could we have done with them that they are able to do, on a much larger scale outside? What did we not see? And I think sometimes that's our problem, that we pigeonhole people very quickly because it suits us. Especially, I would say, beyond the front line, this thing. And I think that's something you need to constantly challenge yourself, that pigeonholing talent, especially what Mr. Rajgopal mentioned, that today talent is actually going horizontal in terms of their own development. So one should not assume that you should continue doing this, and that's our fault. Okay, so hopefully, and that analysis we've been doing is RBL, so I'm a little bit more kind of confident in saying that we are getting the hang of it as to why people leave, and we can start addressing some of those things, in a very nuanced manner.
I know we're almost on
Yes,
time.
Varun, let me add one point. So attrition is a reality today. It is not because of the any problem with the banking sector, because today we have multiple opportunities for the young people. So that we have to accept the reality. The second, what we are doing it is as Rajiv said, it is true that that first 1 year is the very crucial period. So first 1 year we allocate, after the induction, we allot a mentor to each of these employees. So mostly senior people are being given, so that if they have a friction between the boss, they can immediately call the mentor. So mentor will definitely have access to the seniors. So all these are all the ways we are trying to mitigate this issue. But even then, there will be attrition will continue. I don't think it will go back to the old level, joining in one bank and retiring from that. That era will not come back. Even in public sector banks, it is not happening today.
I'll just add to one thing. One thing I will add. You see, I'll tell you, as rightly said by both Rajiv as well as Mr. Thomas, attrition is a reality that we have to agree on that. Another thing is the culture is changing. If you look at the employment surveys that has been published very regularly nowadays, the way, consistently in India, you find around 53% of the people preferring self-employment than organized employment. So it is a reality as far as India is concerned. And that too in the age bracket has been coming down over the years. People are ready to take risk at a very early age today, and then be preferring self-employment than working. And today there is no pride to a position, pride to a particular organization. Those kinds of things don't matter now. So, but what we can do is, what is that basically that a particular person can be looking at? There are ways and means how this is being addressed by many of the small companies, especially startups where attrition is almost 70% nowadays. What they are saying, they are ready to give a leave of 2 years, 3 years, ask them to go and take this one. They say that even if you have come after 2 years, this position is open to you. These kind of special kind of incentives are being created. And I find some of the things that we find in, we call government employment fundamental rules and supplementary rules, those we used to study only for the purpose of looking at litigation. Nowadays, I find them very interesting because they give 5-year study leave, 2-year study leave with a pay, without pay. Many of these IAS officers, they go out and study for 5 years. So that is the reason why, attrition is not that, despite doing such a monotonous work, most of the fellows don't leave public sector and government because they are given study leaves. They are given deputations to other organizations. So internally also we can give a deputation. So there are methods by which we can actually manage the attrition. But we can only manage the attrition, we cannot stop the attrition. It is going to be 40% going forward in this country. We have to manage. There is no way.
I'll just take a minute, okay? So, Mr. Kamakudi was giving a story, so let me give my personal story. My father did one job all his life in Philips, started and ended his career there. When I left my first job, he thought it was a crime, okay? When I left my second job, I felt he'll stop talking to me. And once I left my third job, he probably understood the reality, okay? I'm going through the transformation. My daughter in 4 years have left 2 jobs already, okay? And I think it's directly proportional to the opportunities. And if you just take a step back and talk about education, okay? I wanted to just compare that. When I was passing my class 12, my father said, class 10, he said, you can either be a doctor or an engineer, nothing else. Okay? So I couldn't remember biology, so I said I'll do statistics. So I did engineering, not by option, but I was forced into. And in the first year of engineering, I realized this is not what I wanted to do, so I went to and did MBA. Today, I don't even understand what my daughter's friends and everybody, whether it's in US or here, what kind of combination of subjects they're studying and what they do and how they do. But when any conversation happens, okay, the kind of knowledge, the understanding, and the whole perspective they have is so different. I feel really we have become old school. Even if we try to keep ourselves updated, we really think it's really transformation happening there. So I think why make attrition such a big crime? Okay? Why don't we look at from the opposite side? It's an opportunity for people also. Okay? And because they're going, sometimes they're going, I bless them, saying they do well. Okay? Because it's good for the overall industry, good for the overall country, that it's a function of growth as well for the country. And similarly, we are also getting benefits of people who are learning and coming to us. So I think we need to also understand attrition is reality, what everybody in the panelists is saying, and not necessarily make it a crime. But yes, it is a bad thing if people are living for various reasons which is not in the right spirit. Okay, that is something needs to be addressed by all organizations. That's in a small, in a one word, if I can say, culture. Culture has to be developed in the organization, and people work for culture. And as we said, people work for bosses. But bosses also function is a byproduct of the culture which organizations build over a period of time. So I think we can only do that. Rest if opportunities are there, people will embrace those opportunities, and that's good for the country.
Thank you so much. I know we're exactly on time. I don't know if I can continue with 5 more minutes. Yeah, perfect. Just one last round. If I could just get a one line or a one sentence answer. For you, which is the biggest challenge in HR that you foresee in the next 5 years? I know we heard attrition, upskilling, Gen AI, all that. But from your point of view and your vision, what do you see as the biggest challenge that we will foresee in HR in the next 5 years in Indian banking?
I think the attrition point has been very well covered. I think skill is actually skill. The skills required by banking are no longer the general skills most of this room has grown up with. Definitely not what I've grown up with. The skills are very specific. Skills in AI. My bank is using AI for modeling defaults, credit scorecards already in India. Skills like data mining, I use them for SEM, SEO, and performance management of my digital banking. Many of the words which are being used today, traditional bankers would not even understand. I'm an IITian by training. I go back to my books again and again to reskill myself, to understand what India needs today, not to be a follower of banking, but a leader of banking. Someone did mention we never went back to college. I want you to know I got a degree in 2019 from Bombay University. 2016 to 2019, I was studying law in Bombay University. We need to reskill ourselves very proudly, because we are the leaders who have brought India to the place we are. And we have to make it to being the 5th and 3rd largest economy in the world. Onus is on us. So therefore, skill, learn as much as you can. Go back to college as much as you can. Some of the biggest leaders I know in industry have gone back to college after 50. From foreign banks, private banks, and government banks. Study on, learn, and be skilled.
So if I can say that when we were starting our career, banking used to be one of the most preferred choices from various institutes, especially management institutes. It's no longer is, okay? And so from that perspective, I think the talents are not necessarily moving into banking, and it is happening for a while. Now, when you look at the senior management, top management of banks today, Some of them, many of them, most of them won't be there after 5 to 10 years. Then when you look at the mid-management, they will be probably top management, and then there's a big void out there, okay? So if, I think the biggest challenge from a HR perspective, I'm not getting into cybersecurity and all other technology and all other issues, AI, but even if you look at a pure play HR perspective, I think the bankers, we as bankers have to first understand what is it that attracts people to the bank, and how to ensure that we create the right culture, right perspective, embrace change, and understand those set of people who are still willing to join a bank and want to make a career out of it. And lastly, we have to ensure that we create the right culture, because we will not be able to either force people to stay in the bank or money won't matter anymore. Okay, what matters is the culture. So how do we, and there are so many competition which is evolving vis-a-vis banking and choices people have. But the truth is, if the country has to grow to whatever 7 billion, 30 billion, all the numbers which we keep talking about, if you have to grow there, it has to go on the back of banking. Yeah. You know, there is no choice. So I think we don't have a choice but to build that infrastructure or build the people and get banks as attractive as it was a few decades back, and all of us have to work towards that.
So we have skilling, we have talent and culture. Mr. Kamakudi?
Just adding to what Mr. Indrajit and Pralay sir said, the challenge is going to be, like say, in fact, and the concept of retirement itself came because, like say, you will become, your skill set will become rested. But now that period has come down, and you need, like say, mindset across the society, not just the, I mean, banks, it is going to be an issue for every industry. Since the changes are coming too fast, so the culture of agility and reskilling on a continuous basis, bringing that culture is going to be a challenge for every organization, not just a bank, every industry for that matter.
So I agree with what the other panelists from here said. So naturally, the reskilling is biggest challenge. Upskilling is also one of the biggest challenges that in the next 5 years we face. Another is the talent hunting, and so far as competition for the talent is intense insofar as banking is concerned, no longer limited to banks. Earlier, only banks compete amongst banks for talent sourcing. It is not so now. So it is across the board, you have to actually compete for talent. And then the compensation levels across the different sectors are different. So how do we do that? It's going to be intense going forward another 5 years. Because of course, some of the areas, reskilling and upskilling can take care. But there are areas where reskilling, upskilling cannot take care. Necessarily, you need a very, very great talent within the banking system. That is going to be a big challenge in the next 5 years.
Thank you. Rajiv?
So I think two things. One is we are 6 of us here. We are all called banks, but we are very different from one another. And I would say that your organization eventually will define your business model. You know, and I think, I'm not being facetious here, but I truly believe that how you organize yourselves will build your effectiveness. And lastly, I think the biggest challenge I see is the supervisor's mindset. You know, many of us are to blame for that, but that's for me, if you get that right, because the people coming in actually know far more than we do. It's just that we have put them into a little bit of a pigeonhole. If we can evolve and we can be open and humble, I think we'll solve our problems as we go along.
Yeah, I agree with all my fellow panelists. Talent is going to be a challenge in the coming years. So especially bank like us, small finance bank, we are offering doorstep service. So I foresee that in another 3 to 5 years, we won't get full-time salaried people for going for field collections. So because they have multiple options like Swiggy, Uber, on a lot of flexibility they give. So identifying this, we have already adopted a agent banking model. So we have started appointing agents through institutional business correspondence. So I think we have to continue to innovate. So the regulator has already given that option. So we need to give an entrepreneurial model. Now BCs can operate banking outlets. So we have to innovate and give those options so people have flexibility. Another option will be life expectancy is increased in India. So whether we need to retire at 60 or 58 or 60, so that also. So we have started giving up to 65 now. Maybe we will continue to increase going forward also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. With that, I'll end the panel discussion, and that is day 1 of FIBAC for you. We will resume tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, all dignitaries. Our panelists have well answered and resolved our query on how Indian banking needs to upskill, reskill, and retain employees to fuel the wave of growth. I extend my gratitude to the dignitaries for this interesting session. Thank you, all dignitaries. Thank you all for your active participation that has made the first day of the IBA FICCI Banking Annual Banking Conference eventful. Indeed, you all have been a wonderful speakers, moderators, and guests. May I inform you all that a networking reception has been arranged at the outside this hall. Please join us there. Looking forward to meeting you again tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for more enriching and informative session. Have a wonderful evening and stay safe. Thank you.